Hey everybody. It's a brutal time in California right now with the heat wave and wildfires raging. As you may have seen on social media, despite all of this as well as the pandemic, farm workers are still in the fields picking the food that every single one of us eat. So this week I wanted to spotlight an organization called De Campesino a Campesino, feeding those who feed us. They're raising money to distribute food, hygiene kits, and school supplies to the rural communities these workers call home. I'll be making a donation to their GoFundMe, and I'll hope you'll consider doing the same. Google De Campesino a Campesino, that's DeCampesino, a Campesino, again, GoFundMe, or find the link in this podcast description. Thanks, and here's the rest of the show. Hello, and welcome to Stay for Dinner, a podcast of cooking, curiosity, and conversation. If you love cooking, hate cooking, you have no idea how you even feel about cooking because you've never tried it before, congratulations, you are in the right place. The place at the moment is my small apartment kitchen in Los Angeles underneath absolutely a barrage of construction noise, and it's unrelated to anything having to do with our lives, but it is providing a constant soundtrack. I feel like anytime you hear somebody talk about construction noise on a podcast, you can almost never actually hear the noise. They just sound insane. That is an Edgar Allan Poe story for 2020 is, or just I guess the 2010s and the 2020s is a podcast host being driven mad by construction noise that only they can hear. The podcast host that you're listening to right now is me, DC Pierson. I'm a comedian, author, enthusiastic home cook, and I'm extra enthusiastic today. Part of the reason is regular listeners to the show will remember a month or two ago, Gilly Nassim comedian had a tweet that I loved about how everything in quarantine happened, quote, about a month ago. So true. So in that sense, about a month ago, Haley and I's fridge broke when it was very, very hot. And then last night, it was very, very hot over this weekend. This past week has been particularly apocalyptic feeling in California at large, and we're not even in nearly the worst of it. Northern California is just being horribly smoked out, fired out, everything. It's just completely insane. The air quality is terrible. It's really, really bad in a ton of places in California right now. So Southern California is not even having the worst of it, but at any rate, it was really, really hot in our kitchen yesterday, and I was cooking. I was making some stock, and then I made some dinner, and that involved the oven. And then when it was quote-unquote cooler in the evening, Haley had made some bread, which is phenomenal, but also makes the kitchen really, really hot. And we noticed, because our stove, against all recommendations that you read online, is right next to our fridge, and so it makes it really, really hot. The fridge has to work harder to cool everything off. And then we opened the fridge again last night and the light was off, and I thought, oh God, it's happening again. The fridge is broken. This is terrible. Haley had a really cool head about it. I had a less cool head. I found it to be a personal affront that the fridge was broken from some kind of, I don't know. It was, I really took it very personally for some reason that the fridge seemed to be off again and we would have to go through that whole process again. And so I woke up, we figured, well, let's just leave it overnight. We'll see what happens. The food in there should be okay overnight and we'll just go from there. And if we wake up and it's still off, then we'll just see what we have to do. I woke up, I was sure it was going to be off. I opened the fridge door and the light was back on. Everything was cold. Everything in the freezer was frozen. The fridge, I guess after it cooled off in here, rebooted itself. I don't know what happened, but we'll take it. If you want to just give yourself a little boost to your mood, unplug your fridge, plug it back in, and be excited about the fact that your fridge works. It's really important not to take it for granted. as you maybe have experienced, because there's a ton of blackouts and crazy stuff going on right now. So right now we're just being excited about our fridge being on. And I'm also super excited because my guest on the show today is a friend of Haley's and mine for a really long time, a phenomenal comedic actor, a phenomenal just actor in general, full stop, super compelling performer, one of the funniest, coolest people alive. Kirby Howell-Baptiste is on the show today. You may have seen her on Killing Eve. You may have seen her in the most recent seasons, including the one that just premiered of Infinity Train. You may have seen her in Women Who Kill on CBS All Access. She is the best. Kirby is the coolest, and she's on the show today. We already have recorded the conversation. I can't even pretend like we didn't. And I'll say this, I like talking about a lot of different stuff on the show. Oftentimes there will be digressions. We'll go in different conversational areas not related to food, because food is related to everything. So if we're talking about food, inevitably we end up talking about other stuff. Guess what we talked about on the show today? Food, 100%. Cooking. Kirby loves it. I love it. And I was so thrilled by our conversation. It was really fun. And if you're tuning in because you're like, oh, this is a food and cooking show, you get that. And you get so much of it that I feel like I can not spend as much time in my kitchen as I normally do on what is another, not as hot, thankfully, but not very hot day. I don't have to put the fridge at risk by making it warm in here. I am going to make something just incredibly simple today, and I'm so excited about it. One of the knock-on effects of making the kitchen super hot yesterday was Haley made bread. She made a new sourdough. We had run out of flour after she made the dough, so she wasn't able to make her normal crust, and she made a nice seeded crust instead that's really cool looking. And we have a tomato, and we have garlic, and we have olive oil. So we are going to make one of my favorite things in the world, which is toast with tomato on it. Spanish style, pan con tomate. And it's something that I actually got to eat in Spain because we got to go to Spain last year. And it's so good. I like it for breakfast. I like it in the middle of the day, which it is right now. So you could say the show is called Stay for Dinner. Usually I'm making things you could have for dinner. You could have this before dinner. You could have this at any period of the day. You could just embody, you know, a cool Spanish person with a very unorthodox approach to meals throughout the day, because you're just going about living your beautiful Spanish life. Just imagine that. You could do this at any point in the day. I have done this with coffee. I like it for actual breakfast, which I know sounds like maybe a little bit unexpected. I don't think of an American breakfast as being a connection between coffee and garlic toast with tomato on it. You know what I mean? But it is really, really good. And so we're just going to take advantage of what we have right now, which is a great heirloom tomato that's on the edge of one part of it. You know how heirloom tomatoes are. They're delicate. They're an heirloom. So they've been handed down from generation to generation, and they've been getting a little bit bruised in the process. And as we've all experienced, you can have a really great heirloom tomato. You're so excited about it. You pick it up and one part of it is just completely a failed state, is completely decaying and falling apart, but the rest of the tomato is wonderful. And that's what I got going on. I'm going to be cutting off a little part of this tomato and using the rest of it. And garlic, and how many ways can I say it? We're doing, I'm trying to overcomplicate things already by talking this to death. We're making toast with garlic and tomato. That is all we are doing right now, and it's going to be so good. So first up, I got so excited that I already sliced my bread, but take the best bread that you have. In this case, this is this loaf that was made just yesterday. It's really, really soft and beautiful. Haley made it with the starter that she bought on eBay from a 90-something-year-old woman in San Diego at the very beginning of quarantine. And the woman had apparently taken it from a restaurant where she worked in the 60s, and it had been there at that point for many years. So supposedly it's like 100-year-old plus starter, and we're still doing it. Sourdough has now become the stuff of hacky jokes and commercials about what quarantine was like. Well, guess what? We're still effectively in it, so we have to still be present in that and enjoy it. We're still making sourdough over here, folks. And going to flaunt the leaf blower noise, go over across the kitchen and put 2 slices of this sourdough in the toaster. And while we do that, I'm going to read you from, so I don't have an online recipe to reference for this. It's something that you don't really super need a recipe for, but in my case, I am consulting the pan con tomate recipe from David Tanis's cookbook, Market Cooking, that I love. It is just a beautiful book. Basically, anytime you get anything from the farmer's market, and you don't know exactly what to do with it, but you just like it, it's a great book to consult because he's really trying to do as little as possible to the ingredients. And in this case, we're doing very, very little, as I've established. So he says, in Spain, breakfast is toast. Whether you are in Seville or Barcelona, strolling along early morning streets, the smell of toasting bread is everywhere. There are 2 choices, with butter and marmalade or with garlic and oil. I say go for the garlic. The ideal bread is a crusty, rustic, hearth-style loaf. You toast thick slices and rub the top with the garlic clove, not too vigorously. You are essentially grating garlic right into the bread, so meter the amount. Drizzle the toast generously with a tasty, fruity olive oil, and if you wish, sprinkle it with a little flaky salt and pepper. Aficionados wash it down with strong coffee, or if they've just seen the sunrise on their way home from a night of revelry, with something stronger, or with both. And now whatever deity I felt was affronted by me, or that I had in some way offended and was making it so that our fridge turned off last night, I also feel is now making it even louder by having our apartment building's lawn care guys visit us right now, which they normally do every week at this time. I don't know why I'm surprised, but here they are, and here are their leaf blowers and edgers and all the other loud stuff to join the chorus that was already the construction going on next door. This is the ambiance. All right, so my toast just popped up. I'm gonna transfer that to cutting board, and then I'm gonna take my tomato, and this is the part I'm really excited about. So normally when I've made this before, I'll just dice up the tomato, or I will grate the tomato into a bowl, and we're gonna take it even simpler according to the recipe in his book, and we're just gonna straight up rub some tomato directly onto the bread. But first, so I have the bread fresh out of the toaster, and first we're going to do the part of it that just makes it garlic toast, which is taking a clove of garlic and rubbing it directly onto the bread. And I'm always shocked every time I do this how much garlic flavor you actually get out of it. But as he says, you're just grating it right onto the bread, basically. I'm going to do both sides because I really like that garlic flavor. And this is, if nothing else, like I said, it's not exactly dinner. I mean, heck, I just read a whole thing about it being a breakfast. But it's such a good way to use tomato. All right, so now I have both of my toast slices rubbed down with garlic. And oftentimes I will grate some tomato into a bowl and then spoon it over the top if I'm really trying to get a ton of tomato on there. Or I'll just honestly chop up the tomato. That makes it a little more bruschetta-y. I guess it's not very traditional, but again, if I'm trying to use a lot of tomato, that's a good way to do it, and I'm the one eating it, so I really don't mind. But I'm going sort of according to the recipe here because I like the minimalism of it, it is a really good match for how much tomato I ultimately have after I did my little heirloom tomato surgery to cut out the part of it that was looking not so great. And that is to just take a cut half of the tomato and just rub it directly onto the bread. Again, we're just like grating it onto the bread, using the crustiness of the bread as like the grater. And I like that. All right. Did that with one. The surface of the bread is almost getting pinkish reddish, and I feel like we're going to get a nice textural contrast with the tomatoey side of the bread that's gotten a little bit saturated with tomato, and then the rest of it, getting some seeds on there. It smells really good. The toasty smell, the garlicky smell, the tomatoey smell. All right, my little half of a wrung out tomato, 2 slices of toast, and then, as instructed, can drizzle it with olive oil, a little salt and pepper on there. I'm gonna try to do the flakiest, biggest pieces of salt that I have. Just a drizzle of olive oil first. Not too much, there's already a decent amount of moisture on top of the bread from the tomato. Sprinkling on a little bit of salt. Grinded pepper. And that's it. As Tanis says, eat it for breakfast or any time of day. He suggests you could throw on an anchovy fillet or a slice of jamon if you wanted to. Perfect as a tapa to serve with drinks. It is very red wine friendly. That sounds great. It's like 1 p.m. right now, so we're not going there. This is just an awesome little midday bite for us. And if you've got some ripe tomatoes that are about to get too ripe, if you have some great bread, this is a great thing to do with them. I love this time of year for this very reason. And I wanted to wait for the leaf blower to really start up again in earnest to say, we're gonna go enjoy this. Please enjoy this conversation with Kirby Howell-Baptiste. I sure did. Kirby Howell-Baptiste, thank you so much for joining me. If this were a normal episode of the show, I would hopefully be placing a plate of delicious food in front of you. However, as we are all too aware, it is not a normal time, and so therefore all I can do is hope that the last thing that you ate was delicious and satisfying.
It was. I made some food last night, and I'm on a food journey because, as you know, I was vegan for a very, very long time, and I'm not vegan anymore. I'm a flexitarian, as my boyfriend's mother likes to call it, which is it's like a really nice way of being like, just do whatever you want. But I'm mostly vegan. Like at home, my whole house is completely vegan still. But when I'm out, I'll do other things. But I was at my boyfriend's house, and his brother and sister-in-law were in town. So I got, and we were just like playing board games all day and doing that sort of stuff. So then I went and did what was meant to just be a cinnamon roll run, but turned into a full food shop where I was like on the fly. I was walking in Rouse and saw rotisserie chicken, and I was like, I got it. Rotisserie chicken, as in like almost like pulled pork, but pulled chicken, sandwiches, Hawaiian rolls, barbecue sauce, some bread and butter pickles, and a quick slaw, and we're done. But it came to me in a moment of like pure lucidity. When I saw the rotisserie chicken, I just knew what had to be done for everyone.
Oh, that sounds incredible.
It's really good. It's like I realized I was like, oh, this is a great party thing because people can put it together. And I mean, obviously you could do your own chicken, but it was so easy, and Hawaiian rolls are so delicious. Everyone loves them. And it was just yeah, like pulled pork, like barbecue pulled pork sandwiches, but chicken instead. And it was so easy, and everyone basically did it themselves.
Oh man, that is, yeah, I feel like Hawaiian rolls and pickles, just of the two of those,
Oh,
it's
yes.
over. It's like, it's
Yeah.
over.
And the bread and butter pickles are so yummy because they're like sweet. They're not. I'm on like a pickle journey, another journey, because my favorite type of pickles are Cornichon. I like that sour bite, and I don't always like gherkins in America because sometimes they're too almost like watery tasting to me. They're not like a strong enough pickle flavor or whatever. But bread and butter pickles, I feel like they're not as sour as a Cornichon, but I like the sweetness of them, and they still have a bite and they have a lot of flavor in my
Yeah,
face.
they are. So wait, so what is the difference between a Cornichon and a gherkin?
Cornichons are those tiny little ones that are French, and I think
Right.
they're really little tiny ones. And a gherkin is a cucumber, basically, that's pickled. I guess they're all cucumbers, sort of.
Gotcha. Okay, so kind of just any pickled like cucumber in a jar
Yes,
falls
but
under the gherkin
cornichons are
family.
really, really like sometimes you go, if you go to a place and they give you like a little like olives and wine or something, they have cornichons in there. They're really tart. They're really like puckery and delicious.
I've definitely enjoyed a cornichon in my day. I was just trying to get a handle on the, the gherkin, the working gherkin definition as
Yes,
to
my
is.
specific beef with gherkins versus cornichons.
But
Yeah.
yeah, no, bread and butter pickles are great, and I do think in general, pickles just in the fridge is one of the
Mm,
most like life enhancing things you can have, and I forget about them too often.
100%.
But growing up, we
100%.
would just have pickles around, and I would just eat them. That was a whole snack was just pickles.
Yeah. My mum has a lot of pickled stuff. She loves pickled stuff and she'll have it in the house. She'll have like pickled onions and always pickled onions, olives, sometimes cornichons or gherkins, but generally just like at least pickled onions and olives in the house constantly. And when you want like a little midnight snack to just go and make, like, it looks really fancy, but it is just like whatever's in the cupboard, just like some crackers and some olives and pickles and a bit of cheese. It's such a delicious little midnight snack.
Are you a midnight snacker? I feel like it's something that I see in movies, but then I'm pressed to think of like two times I've ever woken up in the middle of the night and been like, I want, you know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't wake up in the middle of the night. I'm obviously, I say obviously because you know this, but I'm a stoner. So obviously I'm like always, what happens is I'll eat my dinner. I try to be also like I'm quite, I'm probably the most rigid stoner, at least I've ever met. So I'll sometimes be like, no, Kirby, you're not going to eat. You're not hungry. You're just high. Just have a cup of tea and leave it at that. But then if I let the floodgates open even the teeniest bit, so if it's like, okay, you're just going to eat just a handful of almonds, what that then turns into is like, I become sort of like a nighttime scientist and I'll go into the cupboards and I'll find like, I don't know, I'll have some of that bitchin sauce or something like that, that one that's like made out of almonds, and I'll find that, and then I'll find like something way at the back of the cupboard, like I'll have just, okay, a few pickles, and then I have a tiny bit of cheese whiz left because I bought that, and then I'll just like make these tiny little disgusting magnificent meals at night. But that's because I started, so it's not like I'll wake up for a midnight snack. It's just like, if I also, if I smoke and then go straight to bed or just watch a little TV and go to bed, then I miss that snack window. But if I smoke and then stay up for maybe like another 45 minutes, all hell breaks loose.
Is there a particular one of these innovations that stands out to you as like that was my if I'm Steve Jobs, that was my iPhone of.
Mm. I don't remember. I remember one in particular was almonds dipped in Marmite, was particularly amazing. And you can't do too much Marmite, just a little bit. And that is delicious. It's like salty and a little bit sweet and nutty and buttery. That was a good one. I'm trying to think of other ones. It's no, this is also the thing is I don't have fun snacks at home because I know myself, so I don't have any chips or candy or anything, like nothing fun is in the house. So I end up having to like make things. It becomes like a whole thing. Like like most people would just go and get the snacks. I'll have to go and like cook something. So it becomes a whole endeavor. But that one was really good. I think almonds dipped in Marmite. I really did enjoy that.
Haley is on a real Marmite and Vegemite kick this year. Like
Mm.
shortly before the pandemic, I can't remember why she got it, but she got some Vegemite because they have it at Whole Foods. They have it in a
Yeah.
decent amount of places in LA, but like you can get Vegemite, and I think she got it to make this. Nigella has a Vegemite and butter pasta where like that's it,
Ah, wow, that
and
sounds delicious to me.
it's so good. I think it was our sort of like go to. We can't believe this is happening in the world like staple for like the first 2 weeks
Yeah.
of quarantine was just like let's just have that pasta again, and it's so good. I had very little Vegemite or Marmite experience up until like this year, and it's so good, and she's been like slipping it into everything whenever possible, and I've never been sad to see it. Like she's been doing recently, we'll have like tomato on like toast for lunch because tomatoes are so good right now, and it's just like a good little sort of like midday snack. And so she'll do it like a little layer of mayonnaise and then like a little bit. There's I'm sure there's like 9 out of 10 people that even know what we're talking about will think this sounds disgusting, but there's 1 out of 10 people that will hear this and be like, yes. She'll mix like a little bit of Marmite into the mayo, and it almost gives it a like BLT thing. Like it has like that
I was going to say, Marmite, it's not the same taste, but it reminds me you can use it in cooking similar to like Worcestershire sauce, where it's like, it's something that you maybe would neglect, or maybe even alone you might think it's too much, but I'm sure it adds this incredible umami flavor to everything that works. But I will say I'm so with you, because I remember one of my favorite sandwiches is Marmite and peanut butter, and I love that as a sandwich. But what's also really brilliant is a ploughman sandwich, and you do one side. So a ploughman's sandwich is cheddar cheese, tomatoes, lettuce, and pickle. And by pickle, I mean like in England it's Branston pickle. So it's like this dark brown sweet pickle in a jar. And what you can do is one side of the bread can be mayo and one side Marmite, and that really elevates a ploughman sandwich. So I am completely with you with the Vegemite mixed with a little bit of mayo with the tomatoes, because all those flavors go great together.
Vegemite and peanut butter is
we've lost
such,
even
or Marmite
more
and peanut butter.
When I talk about ploughmans.
The Vegemite and peanut butter thing, though, that is potentially a whole new horizon, because peanut butter is like it for me. Like that's it. I eat it every day in some form. That is also my like quote unquote midnight snack. Like I also don't get up in the middle of the night, but I will just sort of like, if we're watching TV and it gets really late, there will often be a point where I just sort of like drift off to the kitchen and come back. And then Haley is like, why do I smell peanut butter? And I will have just had just a spoonful of peanut butter for no reason.
Yeah. Just if you can add like, I mean, I'll be honest, I've only had Vegemite once, and I remember it, and this is the age old conflict. I remember it not being as tasty as Marmite, but I feel like it is basically the same, and I'd like to try it again. But doing the I'm sure you could do the same with Vegemite, but I'll sometimes do a scoop of peanut butter also, because that's one of the things I'll have in the house, and a teeny little bit of Marmite on the end of it. Again, could also be Vegemite on the end of the spoon as well, and then eat that whole thing together. So if I don't have the bread, but also works with almond butter. Not as well, I will say, because peanut butter is almost sweet, but it also works with almond butter and whatever might you choose.
Whatever might you. Yeah, I should say I shouldn't be using them interchangeably. I think we had Vegemite first, and then we weren't able to get more, so we got Marmite instead. And they are different. I'm sure that like a true connoisseur could like pick out exactly what's different about them, but they're quite different. I shouldn't be using them interchangeably so brazenly.
Well, I feel Marmite is stronger, if I remember Vegemite correctly. I felt like Marmite has like a more punchy taste, but I also had Vegemite a long time. This is actually, I'm definitely gonna immediately go and buy Vegemite after we're done recording. I really, really want to have that in my house now, and I want to be able to compare, because I always have Marmite in the house. So I want to have the two, and especially now. I've never cooked with them. I've only ever had them on sandwiches or just as a scoop or whatever. But hearing about this pasta, I'm so intrigued.
Yeah, highly, highly recommended. It's really, really good. It's just what you like about the mites. You know, it's the savoriness, and then with the butter and everything like that, it's really good. And I think she described it as being like, which makes a lot of sense, like something that it's very easy to get kids to eat, because kids kind of are just like, yeah, we just kind of like butter on pasta. It's just a little bit stepped up, and it's just so savory. Oh, it's good. Yeah, definitely give it a try. But let's go back to your pickle journey for a second. How did that begin? Where has the road taken you?
My pickle journey. How did that begin? Well, I love sour things. I love salty things. I'm more of a savory, although as I've gotten older, I've enjoyed sweets more, but in general, I'm much more of a savory person. Like when I was younger, I would go to the shop after school and get like 2 bags of crisps. Pickled onion was one of my favorites, and Worcester sauce. Those, and then salt and vinegar is my third. Those are my 3 favorites. So I love like sour, pickly flavors. And And then I say recently, but it's not that recently. I mean, as in like in adulthood, probably over the last 3 or 4 years. When I moved into my own place, it was really nice to be able to like have the whole kitchen, as you know, because you've obviously lived with people at a certain stage. You can cook, but it's just not the same when you have your own kitchen. Like everything in the fridge is yours, everything in the cupboard is yours, all the space is yours. You can do everything. And I started with fermenting. I got a kombucha mother, which has since gone. I need to get a new one, but with going away, they just get disgusting. Like they do take care and attention, and those I haven't been able to do. But I started with kombucha and making my own kombucha, and that was really fun. Like that sort of process, or learning like fermentation, and then with pickles. I used to, when I bought a jar of pickles, if I like all the juice that's left would always be good. So I would just chuck a load of vegetables in. And so I'd have another pickle, but that kind of becomes a little diluted. And so I was like, oh, I'll just try making my own pickles. And I looked online, and it's very, especially if you do like a quick pickle, which is, like heating up the vinegar and then chucking a bunch of spices in. It's so, so easy. So I would make quick pickles all the time with anything that was going bad, or if I was going to go away and I still had a bunch of onions, I would just chop up all my onions, make a quick pickle, throw it all in, and then I wouldn't have to throw away my onions. And then my friend for Christmas a few years ago bought me fermentation lids. So you just put them on top of mason jars, and they help. So you can make kimchi and things like that, because they're obviously air sealed, but then they have like a release valve. So you don't have to, so you can burp the jars, which is releasing some of those gases that build up using these lids. And then I have a friend, my friend Sydney loves to send, like she's very into pickling and things like that. So we will like send recipes and things like that. And that's it. I really like it. I think it's a great way of preserving food. Like if you have, because vegetables do go bad quickly, especially here. And I'll pickle everything. I'll pickle my carrots that are getting old. I'll pickle like truly any vegetable. I really love pickled cauliflower. I think that's delicious. But it's such a great way to keep your vegetables. They look beautiful. You can keep them forever. You don't have to waste anything. I think a lot of it was like shopping at the farmer's market. You get an incredible amount of vegetables that you never eat just because you're excited about them. And then pickling is a great way to keep them.
The carrots. That's such a good idea, because there is the interval at which you're sort of like, okay, we have these carrots. All right, we got to make something with these carrots. So we have them in like a dinner, and then you're like, okay, that's the carrots, that's the carrots taken care of. And then you open the crisper and you're like, how are there still 6 more carrots? Like,
yes. Just getting droopy.
Yes. And then, that's the most, it's such a disheartening feeling when you pick them up and they have just that, exactly, that just sort of like flaccidness to them.
Yes.
It's just, you're like, oh, okay, well, we waited too long. And then you feel bad. You feel like you didn't do right by them.
Yes.
That's such a smart, especially just the idea of throwing them in old pickle brine. I never thought of that.
Yeah.
But that's great. Why not?
Also with your carrots, I keep mine in a glass of water so that they stay hydrated. So that if you have the space in the fridge, so that they don't get. But I also like hate to throw away food. It makes me feel so bad inside to throw away perfectly good food. So when it's like, oh my God, I can't believe I just left it. So before I go away, I will obviously like not do a shop for a while and just try and go through everything. And then the night before I go anywhere, I am a mad woman. Like it's just like Ziploc bags everywhere and Tupperware and jars. Like I'm just like freezing things and chopping things up, and just everything has to go away. I just cannot bear to waste food. I think it's horrible.
I've always felt that way, but it's been particularly magnified in quarantine. Our freezer has just become a like giant, like Lion King style elephant graveyard of like chicken bones and other like veggie scraps and stuff like that. Yes. And it has been really good for exactly what we were talking about, where it's sort of like, these carrots are kind of like, they're not rotten, but they're also not like good to go fresh or even cooked really like directly into food. So it's been good to have a place to put them and then go like, okay, we can use this for stock and we can use this for other stuff. It's like
Yeah.
it's a nice feeling. Like I feel like the final piece of that for us, and I definitely don't think it's going to be in this current living situation, but hopefully sometime in the future would be like composting. Like that's really, for me, that would be the like ultimate sort of like goal of like, okay, now we're not like, we make coffee grounds we make coffee every day, but then we also end up making coffee grounds. That's just like part of it.
Yes.
But then they don't like go anywhere. And we just make so much of them. Like so much of the trash that we throw away is,
Yeah.
and every time I like take out the trash to throw it away and you can feel like that it's like hot. You know what I mean?
Yes.
How garbage is like warm. And I'm like, oh, that's what makes composting good. It's like it's doing all that already itself, but I'm
Yes.
just about to like throw it away.
Well,
So I go
sorry,
ahead.
carry on.
No, please.
Well, I was going to say and you and I know both know because we're so close to each other. I would take all my compost down to the Atwater farmers market pre-pandemic, and they did composting. So I would keep all my veggie scraps in the freezer in a paper bag or a Tupperware, but the paper bag was better because I could just rip it up and throw it in the compost, and I would keep all of that. And so like between the compost and the recycling, my garbage was so empty. Like I had so little garbage. And then since the pandemic, they have stopped the composting. So I was taking it down to the community garden, but I saw yesterday when I tried to take down a bunch of compost, they're like, have compost overload at this point because everyone's bringing it down. So I had to throw it away. And it's the first time I've like thrown away fruit and vegetable scraps for a long time, and it felt so wasteful because I've been doing something with it. But exactly that, like it gets so hot immediately, like you lift the lid of the bin up and there's so much condensation. But yeah, composting. And if I had the space also, like if I that was so handy because I could take it somewhere. But I feel the exact same way. I'm like, composting is the goal. Like it's the ultimate goal. If you have the space to do it, or get one of those little composting tumbler bins and then you could spread it out on your garden. That's it. Because it's so, I feel like between recycling and compost, you immediately get so close to zero waste.
Yeah, I was reading something or hearing something that I guess in South Korea you can't, like it's basically now illegal to this is, I'm going to say this and it sounds like some conservative whack jobs like nightmare of what like what like liberalism is, but it's
Yeah.
so desirable to me. Like you're not allowed to like throw away food waste. Like they have like so much composting and such a huge public like composting infrastructure that
Yeah.
you are like it's like illegal to throw away food waste. And it's like huge for their emissions. Like they have like
Yeah.
such reduced emissions just from like not throwing away shit that's going to like put emissions back into the air. And it's so,
Yeah.
oh, it's so great. Like that's so smart. And it's something we could absolutely do, on a public level. But yeah, just on a, like, I think that is something I've heard that from a number of people. Like you can't really do, I should have been doing the public composting before all this. I I was sort of like vaguely aware of it, but never really took advantage of it. And now I'm like, oh, bring it back. I'll do it. I
I
swear,
know.
come back, public
I know.
composting.
I feel like I should actually look into volunteering just to bring it back. It was so handy just dropping my stuff off every Sunday and just like, because I also have the freezer graveyard that you have too. I mean, I don't have like meat in the house, so I don't have the bones and that. But if I did, I would. But I do have the whole vegetable things and like stuff. Oh, I could make stock with this, or boiled these beans in this water, but this water is still so whatever. I don't know. Like I made like a stock out of that. I have the same thing. Just have jars and things in the freezer, and on top of that, when I had the compost, I had literal garbage in the freezer also. So my freezer was a graveyard. Like it's insane for strangers to see you not throw garbage away, to see you like put it in a bag and put it in your freezer. And I remember when I first started going out with my boyfriend, I was like, no, just leave everything on the side. Just leave all the veggies on the side. I'll figure it out after. Because you do it like a mad person. But if everyone did it, if there was an infrastructure for it, because in London they have that. In London you have your rubbish bin and your recycle bin, and they have a little compost bin that every household has. So on like, depending on what borough you're in, rubbish might be collected on a Wednesday, but then recycling is collected on a Thursday, and that will be both your food waste and your general recycling. But it makes it so handy that it's there, and most boroughs, if not all, I think in London do that now. They do the composting, so it makes it so easy for you. You can compost your scraps, similar to the South Korea thing. Like, it's obviously harder for people to do it on their own, and not many people know how to do it. But if you make it so easy, like if you present them with a composting bin in their house, or you could just leave it outside the front door or whatever, most people will do it, I think. I hope.
I think so too. And I also think it's like, it's easy to forget that we didn't have, I don't know what the advent of it was like in the UK, but like growing up in the States in the 80s and 90s, it was like, okay, we just had a like green bin full of trash bags that we would take down to the street. And then at a certain point it was like, okay, we've been telling you for a while that recycling is important, but now we're saying like, no, it's really important. Here's a blue bin. Now you put your you separate your recycling and you put it in this thing instead. And then it's just like, yeah, you do it and it's fine and it's easy. And I think in the case of composting, I think people would really like the feeling of like exactly what you said, not throwing away that much stuff. Because when you bring like your trash out to the, like you bring your sort of like, just like throw away trash out to the bin, and it's so much, you just feel bad. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just feel
Yeah,
like,
you have this feeling of like, surely something could, like,
yes.
well, I'm just gonna just dump this and it's just gonna go onto, and everyone's doing this. It's just all gonna go onto a
I
pile.
know. Yeah, no, for sure. It definitely, there could be, it's easy to think that like, well, this is the limit of what we can do or what we can convince other people to do. And it's like, no, I think people would be into it. It's nice, especially because it's sort of just like, it's a way that we can combat global warming that isn't just going like, hey, don't drive. Cause that is obviously like really hard because we've built this entire car culture.
Completely. Yeah.
So we've kind of touched on it a little bit already, but this is, if there's a kombucha, if the show's a kombucha, that this is the mother question. Where does cooking fit in or not fit into your life at the moment?
Where does it fit in? Okay, so I spent the entire lockdown, and I know we're on some form of lockdown-ish still, but like the proper, hey, stay in your house for 14 days and this will all be over, which turned into many, many months. I spent that in London. So I was in London in February, and then the lockdown happened. My flights got cancelled and I stayed in London. And my boyfriend was with me also. He'd come out. And so it was him, my mum, and I all living at my mum's house for 4.5 months, 4 months. He was there for 3.5. I was in 4.5 because I was there a month before. And cooking was my absolute lifeline. It's all I did, because obviously you couldn't go out. So you had to make everything at home. Also, during that time, and it wasn't COVID related, but my nan passed away during that time, which was...
no, I'm sorry to hear that.
No, thank you. But it was, it's so discombobulating. Sorry. And my nan is like, my mum and my nan basically raised me. So she's my other parent. But it was like so much happened in 4 months. But cooking has always been this thing that really, really relieves stress and tension. Like, I can have a really, really long, hard day, and then I'll come home and just fully make a full meal, not even to eat that night if it's late, just make it just to go through the process, and it relaxes me. But I also think because I was with my family and then the loss of my nan, cooking really played this huge part, because that's also what my nan did, which was like cook for everyone. So I found myself cooking a lot of food that she would cook too. So I made dishes that I've made once or twice before, but really, really, I felt like cooking has been, I mean, like my connection and my connector to like my family and things. And so I was making a lot of traditional Caribbean dishes, and I was making really cool English dishes that I'd never made. And I mean, like, my one mistake, and my mum had said this, my mum was like, I wish you took pictures of everything, not to post, but I just didn't even take photos, because she was like, we've made so much amazing food. I wish we had like a record of it, because I just made so much over this quarantine, and some things were completely improvised, and some things were like recipes I'd heard of that I wanted to try, or something that had popped up online and I was like trying it. But I cooked so much. And then coming back here, it hasn't factored in as much. And maybe that's because part of it felt so nice to cook for multiple people. And when you come
Mm.
back to living on your own, it doesn't feel as, I mean, truly, the honest truth is like you don't get the glory. You don't get the same glory cooking for yourself that you do when you cook for other people. So I haven't cooked as much, but it still fits in a lot. Like yesterday, going out and getting all that, and the day before that, I cooked a big meal, and I like made a bunch of sort of almost like Southern style, US Southern style cooking yesterday. But for me, I love cooking. It's very relaxing. It's very calming for me, and especially right now, it's an activity that I can do on my own, that I can be completely focused on for however long I'm cooking that dish. Um, but yeah, I love cooking. I take so much pride in how much I love cooking. It's the most domesticated part of me. It's like the most sort of the probably one of the few very traditional things that I'm like, I love cooking. I love being in the kitchen. I'm sorry, I just do. I love it. It's the best.
Isn't
I
it?
love kitchen utensils. I can't even stop talking about it. I love utensils. I love Tupperware. I love jars. If I get anything in a jar, I keep it. I have a really great can opener that I absolutely love. I just love cooking things. My friend showed me a new setting on my blender. That's been amazing.
What's the setting? What's the hidden
Well,
setting?
I have like a blender, and then you take off the bit that you make the juices with it, and you put the
Uh-huh.
other bit on, which is like a circular one that does like chopping. And she showed me how to make this really unbelievable mincemeat, but you just use vegetables. You use like carrots and the bits at the bottom of the broccoli that you might have thrown away,
Hmm.
um, chopped up onions, whatever, and it like just minces it into this fine, into more of a mince. It doesn't blend it like a smoothie, like it like chops and minces, and you can make basically like vegan spaghetti bolognese, but without spending all the money on fake meat. You just have these vegetables that it has diced up so finely it almost makes a mince out of it. It's delicious. It's so cheap as well. It's like she showed me she makes it for her kids so they can eat loads of vegetables and not know it. But it's like you're basically, like I said, it's like carrots, mushrooms. You can chop anything you want, and then she'll do like broccoli. Use that mincer setting, and then make a tomato sauce and mix it all together, and then just make pasta. And you can make a meal for so many people for like $5 just using that. It's great.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I do think that must be a big part of parenthood is just like stashing the veggies away.
Yes.
So what is you mentioned you love utensils. Do you have like a go-to utensil or your sort of like favorite or sort of swing utensil in the kitchen? Do you have one that you're like drawn to?
I do. My mandolin. I would say everyone should own a
Mm.
mandolin. It is unbelievable. It's a game changer in the salad world. It is it is amazing because sometimes you can't cut as fine as you want. So a mandolin, if people don't know, is a grater, but it slices things very finely, essentially. So you can like get very fine. If you want like I like to do like just tomatoes, red onion, and avocado as a salad, or tomato,
Mm.
but you want it to look like fancy restaurant style. It'll slice your onions so thin. Also perfect for bagels, like a perfectly thin round of onion. Or I'll do cabbage on that as well. I'll make it like a slaw, and I'll do my cabbage on it and get it super fine. I love it. I literally talk about my mandolin non-stop. I was like, I couldn't stop talking about my mandolin in London for my mum. I have to get her one.
Does she not have one and you were like pining for
She
it? Like,
doesn't
oh,
have
I wish
one,
I.
and then the shops were closed, and I have a push-pull with Amazon. I mean, of course I use them, but I hate to use it. So I don't buy anything that I don't need to absolutely buy from them.
Right.
So that I didn't buy the man. I need to just get her a mandolin. I just get it on Amazon instead.
Yes,
Can't
we
get
have that. Regular listeners will be all too familiar, but we have that currently with instant read meat thermometer because I had one for a really long time and I had one that I would just get on Amazon, and it was like $20, and it would be great, and I would use it a lot, and it was cheap, but then it would break every like 8 months. And so that
Yeah.
happened again right before quarantine. And I was like, no, you know what? This time I'm not doing it. I'm not just getting the cheap one. I'm not, causing another just package to be out there, and I'm not doing it this time. I'm going to wait. I'm going to get a good one, like when I can, and in a, ethical way. And it just has led to me not getting another one.
I
But we've had all
know.
sorts of other escapades with then being like, okay, we're going to get one from Target, and not that that's like a whole lot better, but like
I'm with you.
we're gonna pick one, and we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, and it's still for whatever reason evaded us. So I just overcook the meat. That's just the solution for
Yeah.
right now.
Listen, DC, we're all in the same struggle. Okay, we're all trying. I have the exact same thing. Like I'm growing a plant, and I'm also very much trying to like I think you obviously have pets, but I don't have anything that I keep alive. And I at one point looked around my apartment and didn't even have any plants, and I was like, is this psychotic that I am in my 30s and refuse to have any responsibilities outside of myself? So I got plants. They died. I now have a new plant that I'm trying to keep alive, and I wanted to get these little sticky things to keep these gnats away from it. So I was like, you know what? You're not just going to get them off of Amazon. You can go somewhere, like, and I also refuse to have my own Amazon, but I'm wildly hypocritical because if I need something, I just ask my boyfriend for it. But I'm like, I will not have my own Amazon account. Anyway, I drove to Home Depot. They didn't have it. I drove to this small garden center. They didn't have it. I drove to Walmart to find these things. They didn't have it. I drove around to so many different places this morning. Not this morning, sorry, that morning. I couldn't find these little fly sticky things, and then came home so defeated and was like, just get them off of Amazon. Like, I know they'll be here. Just get them. Like, I couldn't. I tried so hard to resist it, but God damn it, they've set the world up in a way that it's just so freaking difficult.
Yeah, no, but
That's
it's very first of all, if I ever sell a show to Amazon, all of this will be fully deleted, and I will
right.
be just the best little soldier for that's. I think that's a big part of being in the entertainment industry, that we're all like a little bit sort of like, oh, right, that thing that I hate and is ruining the world is also, they also own a company that is like one of the
Right.
only two left that make content. So
Right.
that's all just part of it. We're all a little bit
Yeah.
co-opted, but
We are.
I do feel that way. I do like feel exactly what you're saying, where you just go like, oh yeah, there's it's really hard to get this thing otherwise. And part of me senses that's because it's so convenient to get it at this one place that it makes it
Yeah.
harder to get it at these other places.
Yes,
I
it
don't know.
does.
It's very frustrating, and I don't know what to do about it. I don't know what the solution is. I think you're right. It's a sort of like, yeah, you do what you can. You do what
That's
you
what I
can.
think it is. That's like everyone. Everyone's just you just do what you can. Like I do try if you can get stuff elsewhere, get it. If not, get it. I'm like everyone's just really trying their best, no matter what it looks like on the outside. It doesn't always come together and look the way it should look to different people. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
someone's best doesn't necessarily look like their best to you, but I think everyone is just freaking trying their goddamn best. I don't know. I'm
I
too
also,
busy thinking about my mandolin to think about what other people are doing. Okay? I'm too busy thinking about what I'm going to cook and what things. Sometimes I'm overwhelmed by how many things I'm like, if I discover a new ingredient, I'm like, well, what else haven't I discovered? I'll never get to cook all the food I want to cook in this lifetime.
that's the anxiety of that's one of the anxieties of like being alive. I feel like I feel the
Yeah.
same way about like books and stuff, where you just think about like, okay, I read a decent amount of books last year. I'm not reading as many this year because I'm like really stressed out, but I'm still on a pretty good pace. And then you just sort of do the math of like, okay, on like an insurance actuarial level, how many years max do I have left to live? Times that by the average amount of books I've read in the past couple of years, and then you just go like, oh man, I'm not gonna get to
It's
all the
not, I'm not
books.
going to make it. Yeah.
But speaking of mandolins, do you find that you cut yourself a lot?
Oh boy. Okay. So the one I got has one of those little holder things. So you like I'll use my onion, and if you like grate the onion, and if it gets down really low, it's got this little piece that you can put on top and sort of as a guard, and you can use that instead of your hand. But in the beginning I did get cut a lot. But now I am very aware of its power. You have to you have to like have a lot of respect for the power of the mandolin. But yes, I also had a friend who like straight up cut a lot of her finger off
Ooh.
using, like, I mean, it was fixable by a doctor at the hospital, which you don't want to have to do, but they are very dangerous. They are dangerous, but it's
Yeah,
worth
they're.
it. That's
Mhm.
that being so close, riding that line, that danger, that line. That's what, then you're really alive.
Yeah, I my friends got us one a couple of years ago for Christmas, and it is great. And I was like, okay, I'm so excited for this mandolin. I've seen him on Top Chef. I read about them in recipes. I know that they're really dangerous, so I'm really gonna have respect for this. I'm never gonna be chatting while using it. And then within like 2 weeks, exactly what you said, where you just like, yeah, just run your finger into a part of it
Yes,
because you're like, well, I can use this little safety guard thing, but there's a lot of whatever this is. There's a lot of
yeah,
sweet potato left here that I want to get. So I'll be smart. I'll do like 2 more slices. Oops, my finger's
that's
off.
my finger. Yeah. Oops, that's the whole of my nail gone.
So
Yeah.
let's what it, a when I think of one of my sort of earliest formative Kirby memories is we have a friend named Matt who does these elaborate game nights and this big like scavenger hunt. I can't remember exactly when, but I'm sure I've talked about him on the show before. And he was having a wrap up party for this big like scavenger hunt thing that we had all done. And I remember we were like there, and I think we were waiting for like other teams to show up or something. And you were like, we should go and get chips. Do you remember this?
No.
And by chips, you meant like in the British sense, as in like fish and
Oh,
chips, like
my
fries,
favorite
basically.
fries. Yeah.
And so it was like, cool, yeah, no, by all means. Also, we had just been doing a like 48-hour crazy like scavenger hunt thing, so it was just like anything. We'll go anywhere, we'll do anything. Like we're in this mode of just like life is an adventure. The whole of Los Angeles is a paradise of clues and dead ends, and let's do this. Okay, let's go get chips. So we went to a like, I think we ended up at a like kebab place type place
Ah,
that did
uh-huh.
have fries. And I just remember you being like, I was like, what should we get? And it was like, we should get like 3 things of chips, like just straight up French fries. We should just get them. And it was I remember being like, I don't know if people in America just do this, just get a big thing of fries to bring to a party. But it was like, sure, why not? Again, we're doing it. And we got them, and it was so great. And I think it really introduced me to like the concept of chips just as a thing in themselves, like just as this is
Yeah.
the food in and of itself. Can you talk to me about your relationship to chips? Does it continue to this day? Were you just in a chips place at that time?
No, I'm a chips girl. You know what I think though? I think it's because in America, a potato is a side thing, like mashed potatoes, roast potatoes, even fries. They're something that accompany a meal. And in the UK, potatoes are can be the whole meal. Like potatoes are the meal. Like when I used to, one of my earliest memories of, like, I love potatoes. They're one of my all-time favorite foods. But like I used to go to nursery in Covent Garden. This nursery doesn't exist anymore, and Covent Garden has completely changed since then.
Mm.
But I went to nursery in Covent Garden, and outside in this like piazza, there used to be a jacket potato stall, which was heaving all the time. It was just a jacket potato, and you could smell it wafting around. Like you could smell it throughout the entire area. You could smell these jacket potatoes, which is like, what would you guys call them? A baked potato? But like, you get like a
Mm.
big potato and it's roasted, like, in the oven. So the outside is like really crunchy and the inside is like fluffy and like mashed potato. Cut it, slice it down the middle and fill it with cheese, or you do cheese and baked beans. Some people just do butter, cheese, baked beans, maybe like some tuna. Like that is the meal. And people would just queue up and get that. And like, if I was, sometimes my mum, we normally have dinner at home, but like if for a really special treat, we'd get like a jacket potato. And so a potato is a whole meal. And the same with chips. Like after school, if I was hungry, I would just go to the chip shop and get like a small bag of chips for 90p and walk home eating a bag of chip, like obviously in the English way, I guess fries here, but I don't even call them fries because chips are chunkier, like chip shop chips. They're not like French fries, but that's a meal. Like you get chips, you might get fish and chips, you might get chips and a sausage, but like you could just also just get chips. No one's going to be like, whoa, where's the rest of your meal? Like the potato is the meal. So then also that would also translate to after I used to go to this acting class called Anna Shear when I was really young, and we'd all go and hang out at McDonald's after, because obviously that's like the only place when you're underage and you can just hang out there all day. And people would get meals, but I would often just get a large fries because I love McDonald's chips in England. I must specify it tastes completely different here, but I love McDonald's chips. So like that was a thing that like I would get. And so I think maybe that's what you saw is like chips are an entire meal for me. Like if I come home late sometimes, or if there's a drive through, sometimes I just want chips. Like that's all I want. I don't need anything else. I just need that. I just need like fried saltiness, and then I'm completely good. And that's it.
Do you have a preferred condiment or condiments?
Ketchup. I'm like normally just a ketchup girl. I mean, if I get a bag of chips from a chip shop, I like malt vinegar and onion vinegar and then some ketchup on the side. But I could also just do malt vinegar and onion vinegar and salt. I can just do that. If they're like good quality chips, salt and vinegar is good. But if I'm getting like fries from McDonald's, although actually if fries from McDonald's are like straight out the fryer and fresh, then I could also just do ketchup. I will also say roast potatoes, which are one of my favorite ways to have potatoes. I like a bit of ketchup on the side and a bit of mayonnaise.
First of all, that sounds fantastic. Second of all, I've never heard of onion vinegar before.
Oh my God. Onion vinegar is the pinnacle of vinegar. Like it's much better than malt vinegar, and not all chip shops have it, but most traditional English chip shops, like the old school ones, will still have it. A lot of other chip shops will just have malt vinegar. But onion vinegar is exactly that. It just tastes like pickled onion vinegar. It's absolutely the most delicious vinegar.
I will say now, based off of this portion of this conversation, I now understand also why the British invented Altoids.
Yes. Very disgusting smelling food.
But that sounds so good. Like I'm a fairly recent convert to malt vinegar on fries. I feel like they have at like Five Guys, they will give you part of their whole aesthetic is like, we're going to give you just a giant greasy bag. And they purposefully, because they're trying to evoke, I think, a certain thing about like fast food French fries, they will give you, if you order like a burger and fries, they'll give it to you in a brown paper bag. And then they will purposefully they'll give you a cup full of French fries, but then they also just throw some fries loose into the bag.
Yeah, honestly, it's daunting. I think it's like Five Guys. I'm nervous when I go there because I love chips, love them.
Right.
And then but the cup is enough. Like there's
Right.
also too much. And then when they dump a bunch more, like I made the mistake the other day of getting a medium fry. The other day this was months ago before the pandemic, but I got medium fries because medium is like that's what I would get. I don't want a
Right.
small; it's not enough.
Right.
A medium fries were fries for an entire family. Like you don't
Yes.
need anything more than a small. There's so many. There's so like I love their fries for about 10 fries, and then after
Sure.
that, I'm like, how do I always feel bad after these? Like I can never just walk away feeling like, yum, I ate some fries. That really satisfied me. There's just too many.
I wonder if it isn't the peanut oil, because that's part of
Is
their
that
whole
what they
thing is they
use?
do them in peanut oil. And so it is so good, but it's very heavy. I
Very
feel
heavy.
like.
And you can't get the shaky sauce, the like the not sauce, the extra salt that they
Mm.
shake on it.
Mm.
That feels good for a second, and then that feels like a heart attack. That's really not good. You can't get that
Oh yeah,
stuff.
I think I've gotten that like once or twice, and then I was like, nope, there's too much
It's too much.
sensory
It's
input
really
here. But yeah, I did get into because they have malt vinegar, so get into just the putting like a dash of it in the bag and then shaking the bag and getting some vinegar all over the fries. That I was like, I finally see the vision on like malt vinegar and like chips. I get it now. I feel like a little bit. While we're on the subject of roasted potatoes, recently, because we really like making them, but Haley grew up in Idaho, so she's very particular about potatoes, and what she really doesn't. I'm kind of open. Like I could go for a really well roasted cut up potato that's like super brown, or I could go for just like, this is kind of a starchy piece of potato thrown in, and she really, really needs it to be like fully cooked through, good texture, no just kind of like starchy potato in the middle.
Same.
And recently, well, right, because you guys have like a taste level, whereas I'm sort of like, it could be good or it can be bad. But I recently made some just like roasted potatoes, and I read somewhere to like microwave them for a few minutes first. So I like cut it up and then put it in the microwave for like the cut up pieces in there for like 2 to 3 minutes. And that was that was a game changer, I think.
Yeah, I can imagine. I don't have a microwave, but I think that it does the exact same thing that we do, which is I will blanch them or like boil. If I forget, they'll be boiled. But like you just got to get them in that hot water for a second. You got to parboil them and then let them dry off and then roast them. Like that is, and I assume the microwave cuts that step out because you need like some potatoes won't get soft just from, they won't have that fluffiness inside just from roasting. They'll just be softer inside. But what you really want is that like that juxtaposition of the outside being like crunchy and crispy and the inside being like mashed potato.
Yes,
And
I think
that's what the microwave does for it.
Yes, I think now that I'm recalling, the thing that I was reading was like boil them or throw them in the microwave, and I was just like, oh, okay, I don't want to have to get water out. I will
Like
microwave them.
because it also keeps them drier. Because sometimes when you boil them, you can't put them straight into the oil because they're so wet. You almost have to like let them sit in the strainer for a second to sort of dry off, and then you can get them in the oil. You know, the hot oil in the pan. Do you? First of all, there's like, you know, some people in England like traditionally will use duck fat, which I don't use, but duck fat because it has a flavor and it can get so hot. I generally will do olive oil and sometimes add a bit of butter to the olive oil to add like more taste to it. And then, do you heat the oil up in the oven first and then put the potatoes in it?
No, I would normally just toss them, like put them on put the, like the cut up pieces on a baking sheet and, maybe group them all together and just like drizzle a little oil on top. And then while they're all in that kind of like pile state, do salt and pepper and whatever else on there. And then kind of like spread them out and try to mix them around and make sure that like some oil and seasoning gets on all of them. I will say we have done a couple times early in quarantine, we were getting this like CSA basket and you could add like meat and stuff to it, which we didn't used to do. But then especially early on when everybody's like, we're trying to figure out shopping. Is it safe? What's going on? We started getting meat from there as well. And there would be just like a run on the meat. Like as soon as it like went up on the website, this like farm website would just be inundated by, I think, all people like us that were like, what's happening? We need, artisanal yogurt. And everything would just be sold out immediately. And the only thing that would be left would be just a whole duck. And so there were a few times that I got just a duck and would roast the duck and you're left over, all this duck fat is left over and it's so good. And so we would say, and it keeps forever. So we still have in our fridge, like a pretty decent amount of duck fat. And a few times, I don't think of it as often as I should, but a few times, including this time that I microwaved them, this also might've been part of why they were so good. That was in fact duck fat potato. And it was really good.
I would say put your duck fat in a baking tin, like a baking, not tray, like a cookie pan, but like one with the sides. Let it heat up so it's like very, very hot in the oven, like when you're preheating the oven, and then take those microwave potatoes and put them in and they'll sizzle at first and they just get all the oil all over them. You need more oil than you would normally use, and then toss it in. And then I almost like baste them. Like I'll
Oh,
take the potatoes out a little way through, and then pour that oil and fat all up. So they all just get, and then toss them. So they all get crispy on all sides, and then put them back in. And I think you're going to be very, very happy.
oh man. That sounds that sounds really good. And also I think would be a good use of our like we have more duck fat than we could
Yeah.
conceivably use, so it would be nice for a little treat like on the weekend to
Yeah.
do some like extra duck fat basted potatoes.
Yes. And I
Would
don't
be
actually
very
know
exciting.
anything else to do with duck fat. It's the only way I know of it. I mean, there's obviously, I'm sure, tons of recipes. I just also didn't, I haven't ever eaten very much meat. So I just didn't, I don't know what to do. I'm sure there's like a lot of really great recipes, but the potato one is the one that I'm like, oh, whenever I think of roasted potatoes when they're done very, very well, like at a pub, it feels like it's always duck. That's like the difference between like a home roasted potato and a pub roasted potato is like, well, they've
Mm.
used duck fat. Like that's why it's so freaking delicious and crispy, not just olive oil,
You
which
had
also is
mentioned when you were home like cooking different recipes including like some cool British recipes that you hadn't tried before. Do you remember what any of those were? Like which of
great.
those were you
Yeah.
like, "Oh, this turned out really well."
Well, I was making curry goat a lot, which is a traditional Caribbean dish. Is curry goat, and then I would make rice and peas to go with it. So I was making that a lot. I made a point actually, like to make sure I got the recipe from my nan. Like about a year ago, we cooked it together, and my nan was not one for saying like this is how you cook it. She would just be like just doing it, and I'm like, slow down, I need these instructions, and she's just like, no, you just do this. Like she wasn't necessarily teaching it, so I had to like pay attention. But I have my nan's recipe, and I have made curry goat that my family are very, very like. Are like, wow, this tastes like nan's, which is the biggest compliment, obviously.
Yeah.
So I was,
That's I remember I honestly that is one of my other Kirby related food memories. I can't remember how it came up, but I remember there was one time where you were like curry goat, it's the best. You were like, I'm vegan, but I will still sometimes have, and I just remember being like, that sounds really good. We've had goat a few times, not curry goat, and then I've made goat like once or twice, but in a like Indian preparation, and I have always
yeah,
meant to like look up a curry goat recipe because it sounds fantastic.
it's really good. Interestingly enough, though, apparently in the UK, and it might be here too, but it's not goat because goat is really, really hard to come by. It's mutton. So a lot of butchers will
Mm.
sell mutton as goat. They'll just have it as curry goat. But but it is great either way. Whatever you can get here, whether it be if you can't get goat, then mutton also works. But um, that, and then I made these. So that was like that's the Caribbean dish that I made, and then the sort of more traditional British one. I didn't make a beef Wellington, but I was got quite obsessed with like very traditional British things. So I've made a lot of fish pies. So I made like a fisherman's pie. So I did that with the mashed potato on top, which is almost like a shepherd's pie, but with like a sort of fish pie base in the bottom. So I used most of the time it's like white fish and a bit of salmon, but I use like salmon, pollock. I think there was some shrimp in there and some haddock. And you make that, you sort of cook that together in a little sauce. I did like a white wine sauce and then put that in a dish and then put the mashed potato on top like you would the shepherd's pie. And then I would also make almost like it's not a thing and it's not exactly what it's called, but like the equivalent of like a salmon Wellington. So I would do like a puff pastry and then fill it with a piece of salmon and then some other filling around it and then put that whole thing in a puff pastry the way you would put like your beef Wellington in and then bake that. And that went down very, very well. I would do like salmon, caramelized onions and some other veggies just packed into this puff pastry parcel and bake the whole thing. So you have like the crispy puff pastry and then you have the salmon and the sweetness from the caramelized onions. It's very good.
Yeah, I'm with your mom. I'm now mad that you didn't take pictures.
I know. I really wish I did because I made a lot. I made a meatloaf for the first time ever. I made this like pancetta wrapped meatloaf that I've never
Yum.
made before. Like I just made all these things. It was just like going to the supermarket was the only thing you could do. And I love going
Right.
to the supermarket anyway. And I know most people were there, like, obviously you had to queue up and you got in and it was like functional. But for me, it was like queuing up for a ride at Six Flags. I was like, oh, it's going to be worth it when we get in there. Like, it was so exciting to whiz around the supermarket and pick up anything, because it was like, we need food for weeks and we
Right.
can't leave the house, and we're not going to just eat what we normally have in the house, which is like my go-to is like a vegan chili, because that lasts a long time. I can freeze it, whatever. But it's like, yeah, that's not going to sustain us for these weeks. Like, we need excitement, and food is like the only way we can have it. So just inventing new food and making all these dishes was so fun for me. It was like that it truly was like going to Six Flags, just going in and being like, oh, I've never gone down this aisle before because I never need anything down here. Just let's just see what's down here and pick it up and figure it out when we get home.
Yeah, it's so, I know what you mean. It is a certain, like, when you are, there's been times where I've been like at home or like my parents' house or with Haley's family or whatever, where it's like sometimes there's these moments in time where maybe it's like a stressful time in the family, or there's been like a loss, or you're all going through something. I mean, particularly in the pandemic, like obviously we've all to one degree or another kind of experienced that feeling of like we're just at our homes and there's literally kind of nothing else we can or should be doing, and this is just, it's like a way to kind of, once you hit that point in the day where it's like, okay, it's, whenever it is, it's like 4:30 or 5 or 7 or whatever time of the day of like, it's time to cook now. And you
Yeah,
get to make that switch of like, no, I'm not allowed to even worry about anything else. I just have to focus on this, is so
yeah.
great.
It
And
was.
all of
It's
that stuff
great.
sounds incredible.
Thanks. It was very. I do wish it'll forever live in our memories. But I do wish I had photos of it, because you can have photos now. You know what I mean? So I'm like, damn, I wish I took them. But it was also just a nice time. Like, the whole of that quarantine time felt like truly a lovely dream of just like, whoa, what do we do now? Like, with like all we can do is talk to each other and cook and nothing else.
Yeah, it's neat that I mean, obviously the circumstances surrounding it are terrible, but it's neat that you were there and you guys got to have that time. I do think you'll always be like, I'm not happy that the pandemic happened, obviously, but I'm grateful for that little interval. I would imagine, and I'll bet
Yeah.
your mom
And I
feels the
guess,
same way.
like, because we're still in the midst of it, we may not be able to see, we're not going to see all the destruction, and we're not all going to be able to see all the benefit. Like, maybe not even in our lifetime will we fully see the fallout from this, in like,
Hmm.
both positively and negatively. Like, this is going to be a thing that is like, it's going to go down in history. You know what I mean? Like, and so we'll see what that's like. But yeah, at least in terms of like, um dealing with what we have to deal with, which is like, the reality is it did happen. I think that, yeah, there have been a lot of positives, and I'm aware that I'm like, I think even to be able to see a lot of those positives is a certain amount of privilege, because for some people it's been so devastating that there isn't. But even experiencing during this time like a bereavement and losing someone like the head of our family, there are still a lot of, the fact that everyone was able to sort of slow down and be together and absorb that, and then sort of like bond and heal through food and things like that, was such a unique experience, because that loss would have happened anyway, but we may not have had the time to actually like sit with it, whereas this afforded us a certain amount of time.
Yeah, no, I think, I don't know. There's a lot of times in my life where, I guess for lack of a better term, it's like, or phrase, it's like you'll never regret taking the time to fully process those emotions. And I know what you're saying, where it's like, especially with people around you that are going through the same stuff.
Yeah. And I think it is cool that, like, um, I'm sure most people's relationship with food has changed, or I don't know, adjusted during this time. But I think what you were saying, like the whole thing of like, I at a certain point of time, it's like it's cooking time. That really helped me, and it was mostly like, breakfast. Everyone would figure out their own breakfast for the most part, but lunch and dinner, I very much took control of, and it was like, this is. It also gave me some structure, where it was like, okay, it's 11 o'clock, or it's noon, time to start on lunch. And then, it's 6 o'clock, time to start on dinner. And that gave me, like, just having food throughout all of this was like a weird, yeah, like a weird way that, no, I mean, I guess it's not weird, but it was just a way to have some form of control and also have some form of expression. Like it felt like also artistic expression because I could just make things. And I know like some people don't feel confident in the kitchen or whatever, but for me, I'm like, I love being in the kitchen. I feel very confident, like that I understand how things taste and whatever. And so whatever I make, whatever is like left over in the fridge, it feels like that is also an exciting thing to be like sometimes it's exciting when you get down to it and you only have some dried beans and a couple of condiments and something in your freezer, and you're like, okay, what can I do with this? And there were those days in quarantine as well where it was like, okay, we're not going to go to the supermarket for a couple more days. How do we figure out what we have right here?
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, no, it's so cool.
I'm sure
It just
you had with your box as well, right? Because like at a certain point you're
Mhm.
like running low and you have to just figure it out.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, no, it is very it's cool. It's cool. I completely agree with you. It's moments like these in the podcast when I find myself at a loss because my only reaction as a host is just like, I know, right? Totally. But it's true. It's so true. So final question, Kirby Howell-Baptiste, if you could make if anything either that had growing up all the time or that you've had in a restaurant once, if there was one thing that you don't already know how to make that you could just snap your fingers and know how to make perfectly, what would it be?
Oh, okay. The first thing that popped into my head was my mum, and we didn't grow up with very much money. So my mum would like make these incredible meals out of nothing. Like she would make this dish, which was, I don't know what it's called here. We call it corned beef, but it's not corned beef because here corned beef is like a sliced beef. It's like beef in a tin. Like, is it called hash or something?
That
Corned beef
sounds
hash.
right. Yeah.
Like in the tin, it comes in that weird kind of like trapezium shaped tin, and
Sure.
you have that weird key that you turn it around the edges and like crack it off basically. If there's Londoners listening to English people, they would know about this corned beef. It has that weird key and you twist it around and then the top pops off. And then like, I feel like West Indian people are masters of corned beef. And my mum would she'd like fry up onions and garlic, put this corned beef in and then like mash it down and then mix it with like some tomatoes and all this sort of stuff and then serve it on rice. And it would just be like corned beef and rice. It was one of my absolute favorite dishes when I was a little kid. Like I loved when my mum made corned beef and rice. Now as an adult, you look at it and you're like, oh my God, corned beef is horrible. Like whatever the hell they're putting in that is not good. But my mum would like that to me will forever remind me of my childhood. And if I knew how to recreate that with that exact taste, I actually should talk to my mum about it because she hasn't made it for years either because it's like not a thing you buy if you can buy better meat, really, not necessarily. I mean, like there are obviously some traditional dishes that people use like spam or whatever for, but like the way this dish was done was very much like, this is what we have. But if I could freaking have that or figure out how to make it taste exactly like it did in my childhood, I'd be so happy. It's such a comforting meal.
Yeah, you gotta ask her.
I gotta ask her to make. Should we like? What do you mean? How did I make corned beef and rice? I just chopped it all together. Like, but thinking about it, man, I can literally remember sitting at the table, me and my brother sitting at the table with my mum eating corned beef and rice. Like can picture the memory. I feel like if I was ever, touch wood, this never happens. I'm gonna have to touch wood real quick. In a coma, if someone put that in front of me, that is what would bring me out of it. That's what would be like memories. Would be corned beef and rice.
Kirby, thank you so much for doing this. We got to leave it there. We got to leave it on this as a note for any people that are around you in the future. If God forbid you end up in a coma, note corned beef.
Get my mum to cook corned beef and rice and it'll bring me out of it.
All right, that that is it. That is all for this week's episode of Stay for Dinner. Thank you so much to my guest, Kirby Howell-Baptiste. Check out the new season of Infinity Train. I believe that's on HBO Max. Women Who Kill, Killing Eve, everything. She kills. What can we say? Kirby kills. Please rate and subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your pods. It helps more people find the show, and that in turn helps there be more show. You can follow me at DC Pierson on Twitter, at DEECEE Pierson on Instagram. If you decide to cook along at home, please take a picture and tag me in it. I would love to see what you make. My intro song is July 4th, 2004 by Jason Anderson. My interstitial music is by Advance Bass, the amazing Owen Ashworth. And my podcast art is by Sarah Beacon. That is Becan. I have written a couple of novels, The Boy Who Couldn't Sleep and Never Had to, and Crap Kingdom. Please support your local independent bookseller. Also, they're available on Audible as audiobooks, which I myself read. So if you enjoy hearing me talk, check them out. In the meantime, I'll talk to you next week. Bye.